What's up everybody, Cody DeQuisto here and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about probably the most popular, hands down piece of gear or item used by whitetail hunters today, and that's the trail camera.
Flipping away a lot. Our scouting mission got cut short.
So there's no question about it. Trail cameras have completely engulfed whitetail hunting. They are used widespread by pretty much every hunter out there. And rightfully so. Like the technology, the advancement, they let you be in multiple places at the same time. And I would honestly say that there's probably no other single product or advancement in whitetail hunting that has directly aided in the individual success of hunters killing deer than the trail camera. Like hands down. I think that tool has been, it's catapulted things. On that very same note, I don't think that there is a single tool, advancement, or piece of gear that has ruined whitetail hunting more than trail cameras. Now, this gets into a way deeper conversation about cell cameras, and I got a whole nother video planned for that. Cell cameras I completely disagree with. I think that sort of real-time information should just flat out be not legal. I got some pretty strong beliefs about that. Over the course of the last 5 years or so, we've went from, utilizing technology to gather intel, to increase our odds on the hunt, to now fast forward, we are literally surveillancing the woods. And we're getting real-time information sent to our phones. That just flat out shouldn't be legal. At least during season anyway. Like, you should not be able to have real-time information. Somebody with 10 cameras shouldn't be able to have them spread out on a small property, covering every quadrant of that property and just getting real-time data. A lot of deer are killed that way nowadays, and they wouldn't be killed otherwise. But again, that's a way deeper topic, and we'll get into that in another video. But trail cameras, I do believe, can be a great asset to you if you use them as a tool and not a lifeline. I'm going to repeat that for all you new hunters out there. I know it's very tempting to get into hunting and all of a sudden, cameras are a big thing. You have to use these as a tool and not a lifeline. Now, as somebody who's been hunting a long time, and I've seen both sides of the coin, like I've utilized trail cameras in the past and have had great success. They've helped me kill deer. I've also seen myself on the opposite side of things to where they've completely ruined my season. On the surface, running cameras may seem all positive. What's wrong with more intel? What's wrong with covering more areas? How could this be negative in any regard? Well, I believe that cameras can be more of a liability to the average hunter than an asset. So much so that I stopped using cameras personally 6 years ago and haven't touched any since. With that being said, I wanted to do this video and explain why I personally stopped using trail cameras all those years ago, what it's done for me, what it's done for my hunting, how it's helped me evolve as a hunter. And as somebody who understands the game quite well, I am going to take you through my recommendations on how you should be running your cameras, where you should set them, what you should do, and how to use cameras as an actual tool and not a lifeline. Let's dive into it. So the biggest problem with trail cameras, I see this all the time. Everybody's trying to use cameras to help them kill a specific deer. Like they're trying to use them to hunt. Cameras should not be used as a tool to hunt. They should be a tool to gather information, right? That's where the line should be drawn. I think cameras should be used for 3 things and 3 things only: to locate deer, to identify target bucks, and to analyze historical data. That's it. As soon as you start blurring the lines and using those for anything above and beyond that is when it's going to start to actually affect you in a negative way when you're hunting. And the biggest problem with cameras is it's such a slippery slope, right? It starts off well-intended and it starts off as those three things, and then you slowly start to add more cameras to the arsenal, or you keep them out, you keep relying on that data, and it becomes this crutch. That's where you want to shut it down. That's the problem with cell cameras nowadays, is we're all conditioned to want things the easy way. Like, that's just how we are by design. We want efficiency. We want to streamline the process, right? Like, oh, well, if I can set 10 cameras out and I have to do less scouting, that just makes sense, right? I only have so much time. And yes, in a sense, those things make sense. That's why we're drawn to them. That's why we end up doing them. But it doesn't ultimately help us in the end. It ultimately hurts us. This is one of the biggest things I talk about at my shows and to anybody who comes to me personally for advice on hunting. It always starts with the technology of trail cameras. And I want to find out how they're using them, how many cameras they have, what their strategy is for gathering intel other than their physical scouting and hunting. And this is very passionate to me, and I feel very strongly about these views because I lived it. I did it. I was somebody who once used cameras, used them how they were supposed to be used, and then slowly fell down the rabbit hole and started using them more and more and more until I had an awakening and realized they were actually hurting me more than they were helping me. And that's why at that point in time I had to completely ditch them, get rid of them, and not touch them at all. This was a slow realization, right? I slowly started to understand that I was chasing my tail, I was getting lazier. I started to just rely on these cameras way too much. And not only that, a huge part about this for me is the adventure, right? And the unknown. And what it did was it completely removed that from the aspect. And it was something that I forgot about. Like, it had been so many years using trail cameras, like, a lot of us can't remember what it was like to not know what's out there, which is sad. So let me dive into all the reasons, right? First and foremost, I'm going to start out with an obvious one, or this should be an obvious one, that not a lot of people think about this, but these cameras are only giving you one piece of the puzzle. That's it, right? We cannot take the camera information as gospel. This is only a fraction of the intel, a fraction, a micro fraction if that, right? And this floors me all the time, right? I hear it every year, all the time, at shows, at workshops, and it's the comment of, well, yeah, he's not showing up on camera yet, or, well, he's not daylighting yet. And they're using the intel of that camera to justify whether the spot or whether the deer is huntable. And it's just, it's so wrong, right? I mean, yes, it can give you good intel, right? If you have a buck that's coming through the camera, religiously, and you're using that, which this is just such a bad way to go about this, guys. Like, because you don't know, it's not telling you the whole truth, right? Just because you have that camera there doesn't mean that it's giving you the full picture. That buck very well could be up on his feet every damn day, just not in front of that camera, right? That is possible, and I don't think we think about that enough. And me, I had the realization, I'm a type of person that needs to learn the hard way. And I learned the very hard way with cameras. And it was by accident, it wasn't by design. A lot of times I'm searching for things and I'm very calculated and I test out theories, but I learned this the hard way. And there was one evening many, many years ago where, I had a camera in a hot spot. I was, like many guys, waiting for that camera to light up before I went in there and hunt. And I was focusing my efforts elsewhere. And in one particular night, I got screwed with a wind switch. So despite the dead camera, I decided to go hunt this area. Like, I just popped up for an observation sit. Well, what I seen that evening made me absolutely sick. What I seen was that the buck I was waiting for probably weeks, was actually on his feet covering so much ground in this little quadrant of timber. And the camera never got a picture of him because he simply just didn't go in front of the camera. There was a main trail and a main scrape that I had that camera on. And I was confident that, okay, if this buck came out, well, he's getting a picture taken of him. Well, I was dead wrong. As soon as I seen that, it was an aha moment that, oh my God, like what am I doing? I have been so dumb for so long in just thinking that all that information was going to get relayed to me based off of that one camera, right? So this is like a very, very slippery slope. Because the camera's not lit up does not mean the spot is not hot. Not only that, I think a lot of these deer are wise to cameras, and actual movement can change just by putting a camera in a spot. Like, I've seen it happen. And this is more so, I see this with cell cameras all the time. Like, I'll be hunting a piece of ground and I'll see 2 definitive trails. And then I come to scout a little bit more and realize that a cell camera was put on one of the trails, and then that trail was abandoned and a new trail formed, 10 yards out of that zone. Like, I don't think we're thinking about this enough either, but these deer do understand, they do know that. I personally, again, we're going to get into this a way deeper topic on cell cameras and the transmission of those photos and whether deer know about that, which I think they do, in a different episode. But with that being said, where cameras really start to screw people is that when you have that camera in that area, it gives you a false sense of security that you know what's going on, right? This is like having a security camera on the front door of your warehouse, right? And you can't see the side window, and you're thinking, well, if anybody steals from this spot, like, they're gonna come through the front door. And that's all you ever think about. Not very smart, right? Like, there's 3 other points of access to that building. Like, just because you got a camera on the front door don't mean shit. Actually, one of the final nails in the coffin for me was an instance like this, right? I was hunting a particular piece of ground. And just to paint a picture for you, we're talking hundreds of acres, right? And there was one little section of this property that kind of narrowed down, and it was landlocked, right? So it wasn't a big piece. It was probably about 10 acres, I'd say, ish, of ground, connected to a much larger chunk, but the way the piece was shaped, access was a little tough, right? There was one way in, one way out. And I had hunted this 10 acres years, right? I felt like I knew it very well. I felt like I had a good handle on it. I could go in there and figure it out very quickly. And there was one main hot spot. Like, everything in this 10 acres sort of funnels to the same area, right? So it just laid out very, very good. And there was a couple primary trails, a couple primary scrapes that always lit up, and it was just kind of a natural funnel. So in my mind, logically, I'm thinking, okay, I'll put a camera up here, and I had a camera soaking there. It was one of many cameras I was running at this time, and it was right in this little hub area. So, like most of you that are running trail cameras, like and you guys know how much I scout. Well, my scouting of this area turned into, when I had a good wind, I would creep up in this access, I would pull a card, swap it out, back out. Real stealthy, not contaminating the area. I would gather that card and I'd get all the intel, and I would have what I needed to know whether I should go hunt that. Oh, whether there's a good buck in that area or whatnot, right? And that turned into me. That was my scouting for that area, right? So in this season, all early season, fast forward, I'm probably checking this thing maybe on a 4 or 5 day basis, right? Well, we start to creep toward, November's knocking on the door, late October, and I didn't have any other leads. So again, I just decided to kind of hop over here and throw a sit at this area, or the general area, right? So I catch a glimpse of just a mammoth freaking whitetail, right? So, and this was on a morning, and I was probably maybe, I don't know, quarter mile away from this entry point of this quadrant of the property, and where I lost sight of him in timber, he was heading that way. So immediately I busted down and I went and I did a hard scouting mission. A mission like you should do. Scouting, physical scouting, not the bullshit of just checking cards. And I went and I walked that 10 acres. And when I walked that 10 acres, I was sick to my stomach, because what I found was I found a tore up area on the fringe of this, on the property line, like a literally annihilated home body area of a giant. And I kicked this buck out of that corner, and I was literally so upset with myself that I had gotten so fucking lazy and complacent that I never physically scouted this piece of ground. Anyway, I immediately took action, and I made a play to hunt that deer. And I started hunting him, and inside of 3 days, he was killed by another hunter. And that actually was the nail in the coffin for me with the trail cameras, and that was many years ago. And that was actually what drove me over the edge to completely throw them out the window, because they were doing nothing but making me a lazy hunter. To rewind just a hair and to talk about why this is important is, cameras, when we're using them as tools to hunt and tools to scout for us, is they will always keep us chasing our tail. Like, you might get lucky. This happens all the time. You pull the card, you get the intel, you make the move, you kill the deer, right? And that's best case scenario. But more times than not, they have us chasing our tail. They have us chasing information that is not current, that is not fresh. And this gets even worse with cell cameras now. Like, so much. Like, I'm hunting with people, I'm out there, or I talk to people, and my goal, my mission every day throughout a season is to scout, find the hottest spot, hunt it. Scout, find the hottest spot, hunt it. Everybody else's mission has turned into scout, find a hot spot, put a cell camera on it. Scout, find a hot spot, put a cell camera on it. And what happens is they scout, they find that hot spot, they put a cell camera on it, then they get an awesome picture, then they go hunt it, and then get the goose egg, because they're too late. You're too late to the show. And then they're off to the next. And then instead of putting their focus and hunting in these spots, they're just wanting a picture. Or I don't know. Like, it's just, that's where it really starts to blur the line. So the rate at which we can chase our tail, right, is just insane. With that being said, I want to go to another story, another epic fail of mine due to the use of trail cameras. So this particular deer, and I know how big it was because it was shot again before I could get it killed, went 204. And this one still is like a knife in my guts every time I think about it. But so I had this buck. I effectively located him with a trail camera before season. Was super stoked. I had him pinned down to kind of, a draw out in open ag country, leading into a bigger pastured bottom. And I was pretty confident going into the season, right? So season kicks off. I start hunting him early, and he's a little bit of a ghost, right? And I still have my cameras soaking. So a couple days goes by and I'm not really seeing them, I'm not getting any intel, and I'm actively pulling these cards, right? Just to see what the intel's looking like, and I'm getting pictures of them on the one camera, right? Well, so then I'm like, okay, well, I need to, and then in my mind I'm like, okay, I got to get another camera out there. I got to get let me get one on the other side of the, just so then I went from having two cameras in this deer's general area. One was like targeted to locate him. The other one was just kind of to get fringe intel. Well, then I put another one on there, and I started to hunt, and then I started to hunt, and then pull these cards, and then he started to dodge me, and all of a sudden I started getting him on these different cameras. Well, what did I do? I'm like, okay, well, let me get two more cameras, because I didn't understand. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know where he was where he was how he was getting up to this access point. I'm like, it just didn't make sense to me. So I'm like, well, shit, if I hang a damn camera on every main trail coming out of this draw, I'll find out for sure, right? So fast forward, I got 5 cameras on this fucking draw, right? And I got, and I'm thinking, okay, it's just a matter of time now. Well, even with 5 cameras on that draw, I couldn't pin him down. And my initial reaction, and all I was doing day in and day out, was pulling these cards. Where's he at? Where's he at? Instead of ditching these freaking cameras and resulting back to what I know how to do best, is go scout and find this damn thing, I found myself in a wild goose chase of pulling cards and sitting on ambush points based off of camera intel for 3 weeks, right, of the season. So it's about 3 weeks, and finally, I don't know why, but finally I'm just like so fed up. I go and I do a hard scouting mission. And it didn't take but 3 hours for me to cover that whole damn place, every single spot, and I found where he was. And it shocked me, but I found it, and I found it very easily. And where he was held up was actually, he was not. See, that's where I went wrong with this scenario. I figured, I thought he had to be in that draw, right? Early on, I just made the assumption that that deer was living in that draw. That's where the sign was. That's where he was coming out of. So, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't find him. Well, I couldn't find him because he wasn't living in that draw. He was just coming into that draw every day. Where he was living was he was living in a hay strip out in the middle of the open, in between standing crop, right? And even when the crops were harvested, he stayed on that hedgerow out in the middle of the open. And I never knew that because all I did was I used cameras in the draw, in the woods, to try and figure out where he was coming from. Well, as soon as I found out that piece of information, it was too late. Because now enough time had passed. Some does came in the heat. It was November, it was coming on Halloween, and that deer ended up getting shot by yet again another hunter. And it was another crucial awakening. And again, like these are things that are happening to me year over year that I'm just like, oh, okay, well, yeah, like, I should have, I'm beating myself, beating my head against the wall in the time, but I still haven't, gave them up. And another big pillar of this, year after year is I personally hit a spot in deer hunting where it was an all-time low for me. I wasn't, this was before I started hunting with traditional equipment. This was before I ditched cameras. It was a low for me in the fact that like there was no joy in it anymore. And I don't know what happened. I don't know how I got to that point. And I was just caught up in the mission of locate one of a certain caliber, kill it, on to the next one. Locate one, kill it, on to the next. I was sort of robotic in the sense of, I had these goals, and it was before I made the connection and the realization of the soul food that actually hunting is, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole episode that I'll do in the future of that. But a big piece of that was there was no wonder in hunting anymore, right? There was no, like I remember as a kid hunting, and I mentioned this in one of the previous episodes of why or what is Dying Breed Bow Hunter, what it's about. But I just remember going back and sitting in the woods, and like one of the greatest things about it was that what's out there, what's going to come in today, like what could there, is there a North American whitetail cover caliber deer running this creek bottom? Like, could he be the one that comes in and checks the scrape this morning? Like that was fucking incredible, right? And for people who are raising the bar and trying to kill bigger deer, which I think is important, you start to run these cameras and you get in these times where you're just like, you get depressed because you don't have anything that's like to the caliber that you want to hunt, or you don't have anything that's old enough, and now fast forward, you get guys running 20, 30 cameras, and then now live surveillance cell cameras. Like, there's not a deer out there that they don't know about most of the time. You know, you got these guys running them year round. They're watching them as they grow, like from when they start growing the antlers to when they drop them, and they're named. You know, oh, this one's Billy, this one's Johnny. Like, you know, I don't know. It started to turn me off big time, because I'm just like, okay, well, it took the wonder, it took the amazement out of what this is, and I think that was one of the greatest parts about it. And now, like, fast forwarding to today, like, dude, the like, if you've forgotten what it's like to hear that stick break and turn your head and you can and not know what you're going to see, and then in your head you're just, oh, am I going to see Johnny? Man, I feel sorry for you, and I think you need to get a little of that back, because, man, it lights you up. I posed this to some buddies over on the Hunter podcast in one of their episodes. I'll try and link it, but I asked them a question, because everybody's got their out-of-state trips, right? You know, most guys will hunt their main piece, and I'm like, don't you just feel so much more charged when you go somewhere and you don't know what's there, you don't know what's around the next bend, you don't know what you're gonna find, and when you do end up connected on a giant, like, isn't it that much more fulfilling? Like, isn't it that much more exciting? And I don't think anybody can tell me that it's not. So a big part of me ditching cameras too was trying to just recreate that, and especially on pieces of ground that I know I'm going to hunt regardless, like a private piece of ground, right? So if you've got a private piece of ground that you know you're going to hunt regardless, and you're going to spend a good amount of time there because it's closest to you, it's what you can get out before and after work, or where you can get to, like, dude, what, like, maybe try and hunt the shit out of that without a camera one time, and I guarantee you'll feel like a kid again. I also think there is a big addiction element to this too as well, right? And I may, you know, you might say, oh, Cody, you're thinking way too far into it. Well, that's what I do, and I believe it 100% to be true. But I've seen, being somebody who's been doing this since I was 15 and just completely ate up with it, like obsessed with it, right? I've seen this crazy shift happen, you know, when trail cameras became really popular, you know, maybe, I don't know if it was 12 years ago or something, or whenever that was. But all of a sudden I seen this shift of, like, people were more amped about running trail cameras than they were about hunting. Like, it became like this sport. Like everybody and their mom was running trail cameras. Like, it became this, which is cool, you know, it's an event, you know, and I used to enjoy checking cameras and making the runs, and, you know, but think about what it is too. It's like this dopamine addiction, right? It was like the social media, it's like the scrolling, right? It's like the lottery. So think of this action. You go out there, you pull a card, you get it back to the office, you get it back to the house, you get it back to hunt camp, you toss it in the computer. You're just pulling the slot, right? You're just clicking next. Boom, a rack pops up. Dude, what is more close to, like, gambling? And I'm not a gambler, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, dude, there's a huge addiction element to this. And I realized that, and I'm just like, dude, we're like just, and then before you know it, you're like, you tell yourself you're only going to check your cameras once a week, but you start going in there every 3 days, or every 2 days, every day. Well, now you're leaving scent. You're just going in there and contaminating the area more and more and more, and you're putting out more cameras, and it's this big, dude, it is a slippery slope, man. And I'm the type of person that's like, you know, I can't have one slice of pizza. That's just me, man. Like, you can't, yeah, I can't do it. I'd rather have no pizza at all. So, you know, when I gave him up, I had to do it full force, because I just think it's our human nature to just, it's to get addicted, right? And then you got people making photo albums of pictures, and you got them filing all these pictures on their computer, and people get nuts with this, right? And I think it just it just created this thing that was not actually helping you kill deer. It was just fun to do. And that's one of the biggest, claims of these cell cameras is, well, now you can go set them and you don't have to go contaminate the area, which, okay, yeah, that's great, but all it's doing is now making us even lazier. And we're just, now we think we got everything figured out on that spot, and we're not even having to walk to it. Like, it's a slippery slope, man. And everything is so easy and so simple and so direct access from our pockets that it just puts us down this rabbit hole of further from where we want to be, realistically. And on that note, the big turning point for me, like everything coming to a head, I remember sitting at a tree stand many seasons ago. It was probably 7 years ago, actually. And I was just thinking about all this stuff with the cameras and just seeing how they've become and having buddies who are running 30, 40 cameras. And I probably had about, 10 cameras out at that point in time, on a couple different pieces of property. And I was about to get out of the tree stand. And I was about to do my daily circuit, right? Or my, of pulling cards and doing my scouting. And I started to think about what I had planned, and I was going to the same spot to pull the same card. And I was like, should I go check this ridge out? And I opted, and I'm like, no, I got to go pull this. I only got time to hit these 3 cards. And then it dawned on me, and I asked myself a question. And the question was, does running these cameras make me a better hunter? Not does it help me kill bigger deer. Not do they help me put deer on the ground and be successful. Or not do they help me locate bigger bucks. Or help me be more efficient, because I'm Mr. Efficiency. And that was one of the biggest, things that I fell into this rabbit hole with, was being efficient and scouting more efficiently. But does running the cameras make me a better hunter? And the answer was clearly no. Like, without even much process of thought. Thinking back on the times and where I found myself, and like, I literally look at myself and I'm like, your scouting for the day is going to pull cameras. The same cameras that you pulled 3 days ago, and you're going to make your decisions based off of those cameras. And that was my awakening point. And that answer being a hard no was all I needed. That's all I needed to. And to that day, I haven't touched a camera from that day. And actually, the cameras that I planned on pulling that day, they're sitting in the tree. Whether somebody stole them or whatever, I actually never went and got them. And that's how strongly I felt about it. And man, was it the best decision I ever did. And I'll get into that in my plan going forward. Like, there's been times I've thought about it, like, oh man, it'd be nice to have a camera right here, and it'd be nice to know what came through here. And I get that a lot. But I don't regret that decision, not one bit, because what happened the next 6 years was incredible. I have been more dialed, more successful, more keyed in, and have upped my game more than any point in time. And it was 100% due to completely ditching trail cameras. One big point for me, the hardest thing for me in making this commitment was, the caliber of deer I knew I wanted to chase. And that's the toughest thing about getting rid of these and getting rid of that intel, is that you don't all of a sudden have that location tool, right? And you can't narrow it down. So I was a little worried about that, and in the first season that I embarked on with no trail cameras, I ended up connecting on a killer deer in the first couple weeks of season with no intel. I hit the season like I normally do, scouted my ass off, connected on a good 160, old, probably 6-plus-year-old deer on a bedding flat in the morning. Like, it was just freaking awesome. Even scouting that year was like, you know, there was a charge to it. It was like, oh man, what is this? You know, I found these beds. I found this ripped up edge. I'm like, oh, dang, I don't know what he is. You know, slipped in there in the morning blind, hung a set, 7:15. He comes through. You got to make that split decision. You see him coming. You're like, what is he? You're analyzing the rack. You're looking at the browse. You're looking at, like, dude, it was such a charge to get that back. And then he comes in and I smoke him on video. It was phenomenal, right? That deer ended up being 160 inches, and I was so stoked on him. Now, fast forward, there was actually a 185-inch deer on that piece of ground that year. And when he got shot by somebody else that I knew that was hunting that piece of ground, like there was a slight bit of FOMO, but and it was one of those things where like, ooh, man, if I was running cameras, I would have known about that 180, and I could have at least been in the game with him. But I didn't regret my decision, because as soon as I would think back to, you know, that experience and how that experience was so much heightened from the last 10 years of my life that I could think of, and every deer I shot and knowing what it was, I didn't look back. And I kept going. And that year I killed multiple deer, multiple good deer, with no intel. It just reassured that I was on the right path. And then fast forward to the next season, I killed the biggest buck of my life. And hunting him down with no cameras and no camera intel was one of the most rewarding experiences that I've ever had whitetail hunting. And I remember physically seeing him on the hoof and just being like in freaking amazement. Like, I mean, we're talking a deer of 200 plus inches typical, and like, you just don't see that very often. And I remember, you know, having him in close proximity and scouting, and even being tempted in that year to fall back and use the technology, but never doing it and sealing the deal. And every year has been more advancements, more success, more reward, more like, it just charged me up, man. And you know, and that was around the time where I went full traditional, and it was another thing that just brought me right into it. Like the experience and what hunting is without trail cameras is what hunting is meant to be. And I firmly believe that. With all that being said, I want to get into trail cameras and the use of them and how I recommend you use them. Because one of the biggest, you know, I hear from this all the time, a lot of people who follow me and a lot of, you know, hey man, I love what you're saying about trail cameras, but dude, like I'm in PA, I'm hunting the Allegheny Mountains, like I just can't ditch trail cameras. It'd be, you know, I don't have a piece of private ground, I don't have, you know, but like what do you recommend for me? And I want to be perfectly clear, I'm not advocating that everybody should completely eliminate and not use trail cameras. Do I think it would make you a better hunter if you didn't? Yes, 100%. Actually, I know that's a fact, right? If you put all your time and effort into scouting and hunting and didn't use them, it will make you a better hunter. Like there's no question about that. But we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic of our time that we have able to us to spend in the timber. We have to be realistic of the area we live in the country, what we have. We have to be realistic of our expectations and what we want out of this, right? And if your main goal is not to build woodsmanship and it's to kill a good buck every year, or to kill a deer, or to put meat in the freezer, like these are different things, right? And I think based off of those goals and what we want to do is how we should plan out and structure the tools we're using. And now back to the beginning of this video, trail cameras can be an invaluable tool, and they can be so good for that. And I don't like 90% of people shouldn't get rid of them. And I think, but you should use them correctly. And that's what let's talk about right now.